Right, good day junior techies, and welcome to this video dealing with question 2 of the worksheet in the microorganism section of the grade 11 work. My name is Mr. P and I'm going to be taking you through this question. Okay, so the first thing we got to do, and I tell this to all my students, and you would have heard me say it before, is we've got to get context first. So looking at the image or the diagram that we're given, hopefully we've already identified it as a virus. Okay, because we can see the general structure of a basic virus over there, and we have three labels, label A, B, and C. So we know that the questions to come are probably going to be based on those three labels. Label A, we're looking at the protein envelope on the outside. So if we've studied our work, that's a pretty easy identifier there. So we've got the protein envelope on the outside. We can see label B being the nucleic acid or the genetic material, which can be either DNA or RNA. But looking specifically at this virus over here, we see a single strand, so we know that it is going to be RNA. Label C on the outside, surrounding the genetic material, we have the capsid or the individual capsomere that make the capsid up. So now we're ready to carry on with the actual questions that we are going to be asked. So question 2.1, here we have to identify parts A to C. Now we have already done that in getting our context, so this should be an easy answer for us. A, envelope or protein envelope. B, nucleic acid, DNA or RNA. In the case here, we're most likely going to be writing nucleic acid RNA. And C, the capsid surrounding the genetic material. Question 2.2, we're looking at explain why viruses are not placed into any one of the five kingdoms. And here particularly we are looking at classification of living things. So you would have learned that viruses are not living, or they cannot be classified as living, because they do not fulfill the life processes to be considered a living organism. So here we refer to Mrs. Gren, an acronym used to identify the life process that we're referring to here. So we're looking at movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. Moving on to question 2.3, we're going to be completing this table, and if we move on to the next slide, we can see that the table has two particular variables over here, actually a few more, but we're going to be looking at the first column, and then we're going to be looking at the first row at the top. So the organisms that we're referring to here are viruses, bacteria, phytoplankton, zooplankton, and fungi, and we're going to be looking at whether or not they are unicellular, multicellular, prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and their mode of nutrition. So there we're going to be looking at whether they are autotrophic or heterotrophic organisms. So we're diving straight into number 1 and looking at viruses and considering the fact that they are considered non-living organisms. Their mode of nutrition doesn't exist really, so we look at neither as an answer for mode of nutrition. They are neither autotrophic or heterotrophic, so we can say neither or none. Bacteria, we did in question 1 of the worksheet, and if you recall, the organism over there, well, can be considered both unicellular and multicellular, because there are some bacteria that exist as both unicellular and others as multicellular. But prokaryotic and eukaryotic classification, that's where I want to actually spend a minute. If you refer to question 1 of the worksheet, you'll see there that there is no membrane surrounding the nucleoid of that bacteria. So that genetic material doesn't have a membrane. Therefore, this organism we classify as a prokaryotic organism. Further organisms in the kingdoms of classification are all eukaryotic. So in other words, their nucleus does have a nuclear membrane. Mode of nutrition for bacteria, we can have an autotrophic bacteria as well as heterotrophic bacteria. So there they tick both those boxes. They can be both autotrophic and heterotrophic as an organism. Phytoplankton, they are multicellular organisms, they are eukaryotic and autotrophic, so they manufacture or make their own food through photosynthesis. Zooplankton, also a multicellular organism, eukaryotic in nature, and they can be heterotrophic in nature. So there we're looking at zooplankton actually receiving their nutrition from other organisms that are autotrophic organisms. Looking at fungi, multicellular organisms, they are going to be eukaryotic as well, nuclear membrane bound, and mode of nutrition, heterotrophic. Now, our fungi they're also considered our decomposers. Okay, so they're responsible for the recycling of materials in the environment. Now, question 2.4, naming the kingdoms of living things. There are 5 that we need to name. We're looking at the first 2, which are the simple ones, Animalia and Plantae. Please have a look here. It asks for the 5 kingdoms. Okay, so simply writing down animals would not be good enough. We need to make sure we refer to the actual kingdom of classification here. And that would be Animalia, Plantae for plants. We're looking at fungi for the 3rd kingdom. We're looking at mushrooms as the example there. The 4th kingdom, Protista. And over here, our example we would have done somewhere in our curriculum is the Plasmodium parasite, which brings on malaria. And then the 5th, which is Monera. All right, so that brings us to the end of question 2. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video lesson here, or the answering of question 2. I do hope that you're going to join us for a couple of future lessons, future videos. Be sure to download the worksheet, the theory booklet, and the answer guide to help you prepare for this section in your grade 11 curriculum. See you again soon. Thank you very much.